Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending. This is Jawad Ghanem, and I'll be moderating this panel with you tonight. We are going to explore the present and the future of the agri-food sector in Lebanon from different angles tonight. We will discuss how this sector can contribute to economic development, to food security, and to creating jobs and also fostering social stability. As we all know, the sector faces many challenges, whether related to the enabling environment or to the stability, whether political stability or economic stability. However, it has lately achieved a lot in terms of substituting imports, reaching also foreign markets and international markets, and contributing overall to the economic recovery and economic growth and well-being. To discuss all these matters, it is my pleasure to moderate this session tonight with my guests, Mrs. Valand, Head of Program at WFP, Ms. Clara, Pellerin, Project Manager at GIZ, Mrs. Lena Dargham, the General Director of LIBNOR, and Mrs. Rima Azar, the owner and founder of a logistics company, transportation company, Sea Sky Services Company. Welcome, everyone. So I will start with my first question to Mrs. Ann. We all know that WFP has a long track record of supporting small and medium enterprises and innovative ventures and producers working within different agri-food sectors in Lebanon. In the current context of economic hardship and political turmoil, how do you see the role of international agencies like WFP in transforming the food system in Lebanon, especially through supporting agri-food businesses or actors and producers? And what are the areas that WFP today is focusing on?
Thank you very much for having me here. And Jawad mentioned, everybody knows WFP is supporting small businesses. In fact, I think not everybody knows that WFP is supporting small businesses, as typically we are associated with large-scale emergencies, large-scale food distributions, big cash transfers to many participants in the population who are not able to afford their own food security and are in need of emergency assistance. And unfortunately, Lebanon has been, especially in the past couple of years, exposed to a number of crises that have pushed more and more people into a situation where they were unable to feed their families and to meet even their basic needs for food consumption. This is now slightly improving. Nevertheless, there is still a large share of the population, between 23 and 29% over the past 5 years, that are not able to consume for themselves and for their household members a basic nutritious diet. And this is WFP's business. And particularly in the context of Lebanon, we know that the main drivers of this kind of vulnerability and food insecurity are two. One is the inability to generate enough income for families to be able to buy food. The other, and especially as we have seen in Lebanon, is when prices in the food market increase so much that they become unaffordable. And even though we are no longer facing the same hyperinflation levels that we had been seeing in 2019, 2020, 2022, last year we still had a yearly food inflation of 21%, which is still very, very high. And this is where we see that if we work not only with large-scale food distributions and trying to fix the problem on a day-to-day basis, but working with various different stakeholders, particularly in the food system setup in Lebanon, we can make the gap or reduce the gap between the consumer groups and the suppliers quite significantly. And this is where we started working with Veritech and with other partners to see how can we leverage our presence here, the value that we're bringing to the country, not only to address the issue of food insecurity on a daily basis, but to help build systems that will eventually allow for the country to manage its vulnerabilities and food insecurity themselves. And agri-food sector in Lebanon is an excellent opportunity to tackle this problem. That's why we have been working with a number of small and medium enterprises to address the main challenges that they have been facing during the crisis, particularly issues of high prices of inputs, more efficient management of resources, better or reduction in waste loss, access to power, substituting high fuel costs with more sustainable and cheaper solar-based solutions, with the objective to, on the one hand, strengthen the base of this sector, of the private sector, in the market to generate employment, therefore generating income and allowing people to buy the food that they're not able to access. And secondly, by making the whole sector less vulnerable or less subject to external shocks. For example, we've had very high food prices after the Ukraine war, which have really pushed up the prices, input prices and food prices. If we had been able to rely on a local market, we wouldn't have been so much subject to these shocks. That's why we see very much working with the agri-food sector, with producers, processors, and especially the small and medium enterprises that constitute the base for this sector as our business, and we're committed to working in this area.
Thank you, Anne. So we know that there are two main pillars in WFP's work that are saving lives and changing lives. And I guess that supporting this sector falls under the changing lives pillar, which is at the same time can contribute significantly to the overall food security in the country. So my next question is, how do you see that supporting this sector or the agri-food sector with its SMEs and different actors, how could it contribute to the overall food security to gradually transfer people from receiving direct assistance to managing also their own livelihoods?
Thank you very much for this question. As I was mentioning earlier, in our analysis, food insecurity in Lebanon is driven mainly by two factors. It's not a problem of food availability. Markets are full of staple foods, of fresh foods, of processed foods. It's really a matter of access. Therefore, I see two linkages here that can address this problem. Firstly, by having a healthy private sector that generates employment opportunities and generates income, will allow many people not to be dependent on organizations like WFP, which are sort of more reliant on free transfers, be this in the form of food parcels, be this in the form of cash transfers, but will be able to rely on their own income generation to access those products in the market. And at the same time, by having a bit more price control in the market, we will not see these fluctuations. Where I see also there is an added value of WFP, even though we really consider ourselves as temporary in nature, in the sense that we should only be present in a country for as long as the crisis persists, we could use this period of working here, because we bring a lot of purchasing power in a way, to stimulate, inject, and strengthen the private sector. I give a couple of examples. In our food distribution projects, where households receive or individuals receive free food assistance, we work with a network of more than 100 retailers, several hundred retailers in fact, where poorer households or households who are not able to meet their own consumption can go with a card on a weekly basis and buy products, which is supported by WFP. We can leverage this network of retailers that we already have to connect emerging small, micro, and medium enterprises to establish market outlets. We cannot guarantee that people will buy these products, but we can use the platform to promote products, and there is a certain guaranteed demand that will be in those outlets that can allow small, medium enterprises to stabilize themselves in the market until they're able to build their own trust with the consumer and walk by themselves. Another example is that we purchase directly food from the market. Increasingly, especially since last year, the year before, we have been trying to move away from large-scale procurement strategy, but working more and more with small enterprises and using our purchasing power to, again, leverage and connect those emerging enterprises to the market with a foreseeable demand, stabilizing to some degree for a couple of years until these enterprises can establish themselves in the market and stop being reliant on this kind of assistance. So what we try to do is to leverage our unfortunate presence as a consequence of the crisis, but to leave something that can, in future, make every player in the market, especially small actors, small market actors, more resilient to shocks and less exposed to future crises, which hopefully we will not have again, but we can never know.
Thank you so much, Anne. It is very interesting what you just mentioned, especially that you are trying to rely on this big network of big retailers, not only to purchase food for the people in need, but also to connect the emerging small and medium enterprises to these networks and also build more sustainable future for them and, maintain potential economic or business growth. Thank you so much. I would like to move now to Mrs. Clara from GIZ. Thank you for being here with us, Clara. And we also know that GIZ has put a lot of efforts into enhancing economic development, economic growth, creating employment opportunities, especially in rural areas, maybe in remote areas, through supporting also small and medium enterprises as micro enterprises and producers and investing in these resources. My question is, given the significant opportunities the agri-food sector in Lebanon presents, and in the current crisis we are facing that hit Lebanon for several years now, how, in your opinion, does investing in domestic agri-food production can contribute to economic development and maybe to economic recovery after the crisis and after the conflict, the war, and so on? And how can it contribute also to job creation in Lebanon, especially in rural areas?
That's a very long question.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for having me, and also actually for all the insights already provided on food insecurity. And I hope that many of the small and medium enterprises that are supported by all of these different organizations will actually have the chance to be sort of represented in this kind of network of small markets. That sounds like an amazing initiative. Now, Lebanon is a partner country for the German government, and supporting sustainable economic development is a priority for Germany and therefore also for us. And so with funds mainly from the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, but also from the European Union, we as GIZ are really working in different sectors where we share a strategic sort of priority with the Lebanese government, and like in reform initiatives, and that might be governance, vocational education and training, water, but also particularly sustainable economic development, employment promotion, and also agriculture and food security. And for that we work with the Lebanese government, but we also work with local actors. We work with lots of sort of partners, political partners. In the project that I manage, we work specifically with the Ministry for Agriculture. We do see food security as a main sort of strategic entry point to work on sustainable economic development, and I think there we really cross paths because agri-food production and industry is such a is a source of one of the main sort of sources of livelihood sources in the rural areas that we work in, right? So it cannot be ignored. But in order to do that, I think strengthening the sector does require more than supporting farmers, which is something that we also do, and it requires more than supporting the MSMEs, but it really means that we do work on this, what we've called the enabling environment, and this is also why all of us are here, which means that we need to work on affordable energy, access to finance, access to quality assurance, access to standards, market linkages, export, and all of these. And so I think supporting the agri-food industry and production is central to sustainable local economic development, but it cannot really do that in isolation. Meaning it cannot do that in isolation also determines how we work on it as GIZ. To give you an example, we use a multi-sectoral and actually multi-stakeholder approach. So we'll have projects such as ACE that might be working on, strengthening agri-food enterprises and farmers with good agricultural practices, and some of our partners that actually do the work are here as well. And at the same time, we have projects that really focus on job readiness, especially for youth and women. So they do this linkage with the private sector. And then we have projects that work on technical vocational education and training. So they would really focus on having the right trainings to match the labor market. And I think only if we have this kind of approach can we really strengthen local economic development, might that be specifically in the agri-food sector or otherwise. And it also means that when working on the sector, so agri-food, it means working along the value chains. So again, when we, and I've seen some of our startups actually also present here in the room, and they're also represented in the next one later on if you want to have a look. We've been working with Veritech on projects such as REEF and Ariaf, where we've really supported MSMEs that have themselves identified gaps in the value chains in rural areas, but that might be on the processing side, on the logistics side, on the production side, and we have helped, or we try to help them to become to have competitive local solutions. Now, it also means addressing actually the barriers that they face, right? And one of the big barriers here for us is energy. So we've also really worked actually across, whether that's farmers, enterprises in the agri-food sectors, etc. We work on what we call just transition, others call it energy transition, or like all of this, working on circular solutions. And while that does make the companies more competitive, it also makes them more ecologically sustainable. So I think this is really, as a sort of development partner and us in Lebanon, this is how we work on sustainable economic development, how we work in the agri-food industry. So it does contribute for sure, and it's incredibly important, as I said, for rural areas, for those local areas. It does create employment, and it does create employment beyond the enterprise, right? It does create employment along the value chains. It means that people have affordable food, so it contributes actually to food security. It contributes to, better quality food, nutritious food. So I think for us, it's an incredibly important sector to work in, and we'll continue to do so.
Mm. Thank you so much. Also, one of GIZ's areas of interest is social stability. So you are interested not only in food security and economic empowerment, but in social stability as well, which is really interesting, especially in a country like Lebanon, given everything we are witnessing these days. So my next question is, how do you view economic empowerment, especially in marginalized areas or marginalized community groups, as a factor that could also maintain social stability or address social problems and improve in general the social well-being of people?
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly one of the priorities as well, and whether that's social stability or social cohesion or however you want to call it, We do see economic empowerment or economic inclusion, it also again depends on how you like to call it, as a practical tool for resilience. And I think that means that when we support, for example, local MSMEs, they have such a big role to play in their local areas, right? So they drive inclusive growth and therefore circulate value locally and thereby basically increase the well-being of the community as a whole and not just themselves as as a person or as an individual. And also inclusion is not an add-on. What does that mean? It means we don't have ready-made solutions, right? So actually to be effective and to have sustainable solutions in the economic development sector, everything needs to be locally owned, which means that the people that, the people that are part of the project are the ones that need to come up with the solutions because they need to own the solutions. Otherwise, it's somebody coming in from the outside with a not so good idea, and that will probably
enforcing
not work.
the solutions.
Exactly.
Yes.
So our partners are really the ones that come up with all of these amazing things that we're then trying to implement jointly. And to give you an idea, and it also goes a little bit into something that Anna said before. We have also done lots of food parcel distributions, okay? To really target those most vulnerable, we did food parcel distributions in a lot of areas. But the food parcels themselves are different from lots of others because they use local products. So one of the staple foods in food parcels is tomato paste. To give you an example, the tomato paste in those food parcels has been produced, in our case, by women-led cooperatives. So what does that mean is that we already target people who are quite often excluded from economic development or from access to markets. They produce, we buy from them. So there's direct economic sort of positive impact on marginalized communities, but also on the local economy. The tomatoes are local. So you see that basically the whole chain stays in an area and really supports the development, local economic development, but also the food security. And that's a local solution that for us has worked very well and has been developed with, in this case, the Schuf Biosphere, who've successfully implemented this approach. But it also means that for us, inclusion is a core driver for stability because we are able to address questions of inequality, right? So by working, actually, we've worked with lots of youth entrepreneurs, with women-led businesses, businesses managed by people with disabilities. And so it does it basically helps uncover this economic potential that was untapped, and there is such a potential, and not using that would just be a shame and would be negative for the economic development of the area, but it also means you can address questions of inequality. So yeah, I think overall it means for us, investing in the agri-food sector means social stability, means food security, means local economic development. So it does this perfect cycle of actually how we can really work on local solutions with all of our amazing partners.
Thank you so much, Clara. It is really interesting to see how economic development and social stability complement each other, and economic stability is really a prerequisite of social stability. Thank you so much for your very informative talk. And now I'm gonna move to Mrs. Lena Dargham. Thank you for being here with us tonight. So again, Mrs. Lena is the Director General of LIBNOR. LIBNOR is the Lebanese Standards Institution. LIBNOR sets the standards and definitions of product quality and the codes of work practice. Now this talk now with Mrs. Lena is very important for the SMEs who are emerging now in the market to be able to comply with standards without wasting resources from the beginning. So basically, also LIBNOR is a member of several international organizations, such as the International Organizations for Standardization, or ISO. My first question, Mrs. Lena, we would like to hear from you more about LIBNOR. What is its mission, and what are its main areas of work?
Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be with you in this very interesting discussion. on how to enable the local productive sector. And allow me, before maybe I start speaking about the role of LIBNOR, to highlight briefly maybe the importance of having a national framework, a trustable and reliable national framework. Anne mentioned earlier a healthy private sector, spoke about the healthy private sector. A healthy private sector cannot really grow and expand if we don't have a national infrastructure and a reliable infrastructure. And when I speak about the reliable infrastructure, I'm not only mentioning policies and investment opportunities, I'm speaking about the technical infrastructure. It means standards, regulations, how to reduce technical barriers to trade, how to be able to enforce regulations, because this is how we can support the productive sector. This is how we can expand our local production to external markets, and this is how we gain trust. And without trust, our local productive sector cannot thrive. And let me say that LIBNOR is at the core of this quality infrastructure, at the core of this reliable framework that exists at the national level. Without standards, we cannot build trust. And standards are the language of the market. It's the language of trade. And this is how we build trust, not only between the seller and the buyer, it's how we build trust along the supply chain that also was mentioned earlier. So LIBNOR is a public institution. We are responsible for developing national standards in all sectors, in petrochemicals, electrical, food sector, construction materials, sustainable development, management systems, mechanical sector. So we're covering a range of very important sectors. We focus our work on maybe 4 main areas. First, as I mentioned, the development of standards, and then later on, suggest the enforcement of these standards through technical regulations by decrees from the Council of Ministers. And this is where the national authorities have to control the implementation of the standards, each ministry in their field of work. The second area of work is focusing on capacity building and training. We do have a lot of trainings that we provide to our stakeholders from the public and private sector, covering different areas of quality, safety, carbon footprint, water footprint, social responsibility. So we're covering not only technical standards related to products, but also to management system and sustainable development. The third area of work is related to access to information. We have an information center that can provide all producers, traders, all the stakeholders, information related to standards, technical regulations, conformity assessment procedures. And when I mention conformity assessment procedures, for those of you who don't know, it covers testing, laboratory certifications that are needed for an industry to be able to enter the Lebanese market or even to export to external markets. So if you are an SME and willing to export to Jordan, you have a specific product that you would like to export, we can provide you with the information on standards in Jordan so you can access the market. And the last pillar of our work is product certification. We do provide a product certification mark, which is called the NL conformity mark. It's a mark that reflects the compliance of your product to the national standards. So if you are producing hummus bithine or you are producing any industrial product and you would like to prove to your consumer or to prove to your supplier that you are complying with the Lebanese standards and regulation, you can come to LIBNOR and we audit you, we check your management system, and we test your product, and then we grant you the use of this conformity mark. You can put it on your label and then prove this compliance to standards and regulations. So this is in brief what we do, and of course we represent Lebanon internationally in all international organizations like ISO, and this indirectly allows to SMEs, to Lebanese producers, to be part of the elaboration process of international standards. Why is this important? Because when you write the standards, you are writing the rule of the market. So when we allow our Lebanese industrialists to contribute to the development process of ISO standards, of EN and European standards, then they are contributing to the rules that will be governing the market later on.
Thank you so much. This leads me to the next question, specifically related to the SMEs and specifically the startups, because I have witnessed, I have seen, and we've all seen many young entrepreneurs who are very motivated to initiate, to start a certain business, for example, and when it comes to compliance with quality and safety standards, some of them might go out of business. Some of them might not be able to comply with the standards of quality, of safety, many things. Some of them also might waste significant resources in the wrong direction because they do not know how to start in the right direction from the first place when it comes to quality and safety. So please tell us more about the mandatory versus the voluntary standards, and how can market actors, specifically talking about startups, SMEs, can access the information at the beginning of their journey to avoid loss, waste of resources, and non-compliance?
At an early stage of the process. Yeah. At an early stage of the process.
At an early stage, yes.
Well, let me say first that we all know that we are a market-driven, I mean, it's a quality-driven market. So if you are not complying with quality requirements, you cannot access international markets. If you want to compete, you have to compete with your quality. Especially in Lebanon, we don't have a mass production. So we need to be sure that our products are of a good quality, a high quality. And this is done through different, components, complying to different components, and one of these are the standards. How to explain the difference between mandatory and voluntary? Standards are in general technical documents that are related either to a product or to a process. So if you are producing one product, you need to comply with the vertical standard of the product, but you need to know that there are horizontal standards that are related to management systems, to labeling, to health claims, to nutritional claims requirement, pesticide residues, and we know that, let me say that 70% of the products, the global trade internationally, face rejection and due to technical barriers to trade that are related to all of these issues. And if we look at the rejection percentage of Lebanese products that are entering the European market, for example, we notice that most of the products, okay, some of them are related to safety issues, food additives, etc., but most of them are related to labeling requirements. So when we want to start a business, we need to start it right. And when we want to start right, we need to, first of all, comply with the regulatory requirements for the licensing at the Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Economy and Trade, but we need to start it right from the technical point of view, to implement a safety management system, a quality management system, and screen or assess the obligations or the mandatory requirements that are imposed by standards. So LIBNOR can assist in that by providing the information. Access to information is key, and this is where I mentioned our information center that is ready to help. We are also working a lot with international organizations and donors to implement some projects, helping SMEs to implement safety management system. I'd like to mention one of the projects that will start in a month with ISO. We are selecting now 2 organizations, maybe in the future 3 or 4, and assist them free of charge to implement ISO 22000. And they will be SMEs, and we have chosen cooperatives and a lot of foundations that are doing a lot of social also activities. So we can help by providing the information, but also we can help by building capacity and maybe attracting SMEs to join some of these projects.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting. My last question, yes.
Can I add one point
please,
on this? Usually SMEs focus on compliance to safety and quality standards. Let me tell you that at the European Union level, we do have now new regulations called the Green Deal regulation that are focusing more on the environmental part, on the carbon footprint, the water footprint, and on the environmental labeling. And some of the Arab countries now are imposing mandatory certifications against ISO 14001, which is the environmental management system. So even if you are working properly, producing a wonderful food product, and you're not complying with the environmental regulations, you may not be able to enter these markets in the future. So this is key, and this is where we need to shift also maybe our regulations, the licensing procedures that we are using with SMEs to drive them towards applying these management systems and the mindset, the culture. Yes.
One more thing, Mrs. Lena, before we finish this talk. In addition to accessing international markets, I think also compliance with LIBNOR standards is important for the local market. So not only the ones who are planning to export outside Lebanon are only the ones who have to take care of the LIBNOR standards or the quality standards. Also, it is, I think, important for those who are trying to access, let's say, medium retailers, big retailers, restaurants, the HoReCa sector in general. So can you please talk more about this specific point also?
Yes, Lebanese standards that are published by LIBNOR apply to all products that exist in the local market, whether imported or produced locally. And these standards, and especially the mandatory standards, are being part of the market surveillance activity of several ministries. So if you have a product in the market, in the supermarket, the Ministry of Economy and Trade can take a sample and check if you are complying with these standards, and if you're not, then you will undergo a certain legal process. The Ministry of Agriculture is doing also inspections according to these standards. So if you are working in the Lebanese market, one of the main issues that you need to comply with are really the standards, compliance to especially mandatory standards that are published by decrees and published in the official journal. So they become a regulation that you need to comply with. LIBNOR does not do a market surveillance activity, مش نحن اللي بنراقب, but the ministries in charge, according to the law, are responsible to do it, whether at the industry level or at the market level. So standards are part of the regulations, are part of the inspection that is being done by the ministries in charge, but it is also a main pillar for building trust in the local market with local consumers, within the supply chain from farm to fork, from the agriculture to the supermarket, and also part of the trust that we build to be able to expand our markets. And certification to standards is very important. The FSMA law, for example, in USA is now shifting the responsibility from the producer to the distributor, and this is where all distributors in the US now are imposing on every single producer that is willing to export to be FSSC certified, for example. So this is becoming more and more required in the local market and for export.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Mrs. Rima Azar, Sea Sky Services, right? So yes. As a company with this long record of experience.
25. 30 actually.
30 years, wow. With this big experience in the logistics sector, we would like to hear from you more about this sector, because it is very important, and maybe sometimes we are not really attentive to the details that might be very important, which are related to logistics. And here maybe your focus is on the export market more than the local market, right? So what is the role of this sector in facilitating access to foreign markets and complying with international standards? We all know that many Lebanese products now, especially the food-related ones, which we are known for, they successfully gained good positioning in the international market, and some of them even obtained very good reputation across markets in different areas, whether in Europe or on the GCC or in USA. So if you can explain maybe more about this sector and how you view the...
Thank you so much, and thank you for the amazing ladies that are present here and for everybody's attending. I wish we have so much SMEs here, because it was really a valuable panel from all aspects. Sea Sky Services, as I told you, have been in the shipping industry since the last 30 years. But in 2019, and that is, as previously mentioned in the previous panel, when there are crises, there are opportunities. We managed to focus instead of just imports, because as you know, Lebanon is mainly an importer country, and our cross-trade department from outside to outside, we managed to focus on the export readiness. So we created something called the EMC department, which is the Export Management Consultancy, in order to help Lebanese exporters to know how to have this, let's say, export journey smoother. I also worked with Koot. Koot is the biggest cluster of food in Lebanon, agro-food, which is powered by Beritech. I'm one of their consultants for logistics. And we worked as well with UNIDO, who launched the Export Academy. So we worked with so many SMEs, and we noticed that there are lots of gaps. One of the main issues that we face, as mentioned by Lena, is the issue of the regulations and the certifications. Many Lebanese exporters believe that logistics is just shipping. That is, I have an order, and this order I have to put it on the ship or on a plane, and that's it. They, especially the new ones, I'm talking about the new ones, they forget that we have borders that we have to cross from Lebanon to outside with customs, and we have customs also at the other end. In addition to the customs, we have, like we mentioned, lots of institutions that really need to be look at the product from all aspects, from the labeling to the packaging. Now, which you mentioned about Europe, plastic, for example, is not allowed. So we have to look at things from all aspects. So one of the main gaps that we have is the documentation issue. And as per ITC, 27% of exporters fail in exporting, and their cargo gets stuck at the borders due to lack of documentation, proper documentation. So this is one thing. The second thing that we also face is that, especially also with the young or the startups, when we're talking about exporters, is that they do not vet their buyers. When you're talking about big buyers outside GCC, Europe, or even in the USA, it's not an issue. They know their devoir, like we say, homework. They know what are the standards that are required in their country for any cargo to move from the border to the warehouse. But we're talking about somebody who sees a Lebanese product in an exhibition or online, and he wants to import it. And here comes the dilemma. And always I hear that from exporters. Well, you know, but somebody took this in their bag, and it managed to enter in that country. And then I have to tell them, yes, but it didn't cross the customs. It didn't go to the borders. We have to look at so many things before we do that. From the product itself to the packaging and to the reliability. And the buyer there does not have the right licenses in order to import this product, or the distributor. So this is an issue. It's not just important to ship cargo or to export. The most important thing is to get cargo to the destination, to the warehouse. So this is something that we really have to think about. Another issue which is really frustrating for me on the personal level is the loss of opportunity due to the non-calculation of the right landed cost. Landed cost means the cost of the product arriving at the destination. So if your product is here is $1, it doesn't mean that with the $1, you just add shipping cost to it, and then you will know what will be the cost at the last mile or at the receiver. So if I want to ship something from Lebanon to Dubai, if I want to make just the competitive, just to have a competition, the analysis of my competition, I have to calculate correctly my landed cost to know if my product will be competitive in that market. If somebody is selling the same product in Dubai at $3, it doesn't mean that with $1 my product will be competitive there. So this is something that they really have to focus on. And in the Export Academy, I myself wrote the curriculum on how to calculate the landed cost. This is very important because to be competitive, you have to have a lower cost than your competition in the local market. And one main thing also we really need to focus on is what is needed in the other markets. We can have great products. Clara just mentioned something, and something came to my mind. When you mentioned something about the tomato paste. 2 years ago, I have Sea Sky services in London. I live in London as well. So one of my friends in one of the biggest supermarkets in London told me, we need chopped tomatoes. I know you have great contacts with lots of Lebanese suppliers. Can we manage to get, they wanted directly 20 containers, 20 footers of chopped tomatoes. I literally talked to everybody I know who works with tomato, and we didn't find that. And chopped tomatoes is one of the biggest, I mean, like, it has a lot of demand. So nobody does, because you know why? We do not have the right equipment. It needs a special machine so that these tomatoes are chopped instead of being tomato paste. And you know the amount of tomatoes we have in Lebanon, and it's going to waste. So this is something probably also we have to look at the partners or the donors in order to look at what is needed in the other markets, not just to produce everything, or not to stick to our traditional way of working, just to have an innovative way to look at things so that we can really supply the needed demand.
Thank you so much. This is very interesting. It moves me to the next question. You are interested in AI.
I am an AI licensed trainer.
AI licensed trainer.
In business efficiency.
That's very interesting. So now this is an emerging thing, AI, that we do not know a lot about. And we do not know a lot about AI in business also. So maybe you can tell us more about AI in business. How could it present a new opportunity or a new horizon that moves the businesses, especially the small and medium ones, to achieve most of their potentials, to utilize more opportunities? And how do you see the role of AI in maybe marketing and production, product positioning? So we are.
Okay, I'm going to talk about that.
We are very interested to hear more about this. Please.
I have a workshop at 6:30. I invite you all to attend it. Today? In the Knowledge Hub. This is first.
About AI?
About AI in business efficiency. But what I'm going to talk about here is that you mentioned something which is very important. You said we do not know much about. Probably because I'm not living always in Lebanon. I feel really the lack in this area, that people in Lebanon still think of AI. I'm Lebanese, I know, but because I'm living outside.
We only know ChatGPT. That's the only thing that we know.
But there are so much to AI more than that. And we really need to, because AI is the past. It's not the future, it's not the present. Yes. We're going places that we really, even now, I teach my people, I have training, I teach my trainees, we do not even think the traditional way, neither in marketing, nor in inventory, nor in anything. All industries are shifting. And if we do not really ride this wave now, we will lose our competitive edge in everything. Just to give you, because working with AI also makes your memory go bad. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to read some statistics. It's not me, it's McKinsey, it's Statistica, it's all these big institutions. AI reduced export documentation time by up to 80%. Predictive AI reduces agri-food spoilage and storage waste by 30%. AI-powered, AI-powered customer support tools cut 60 to 70%. Exporters using AI in pricing see profit margin gains up to 15%. So, and it goes on and on and on. What everybody needs to know is that AI is a must. It's just a tool. We should not be afraid of it. We should partner with AI. The most important thing is that to focus on 1, 2, 3, 4 tools at the beginning, take baby steps, focus on making your AI strategy, but AI can help you with very cheap tools. You can pay, per month, probably $50 to $60, and you will have a team of AI assistants, AI automation, so many things, and AI agents, because AI agents is the buzzword right now, and it will make you become more efficient, more productive. With 1 or 2 team members in your team, you can work as if you are working with 100. So please do not fear AI, rather embrace it and change the mindset that this is how it's going to be. It's not the future, it's really yesterday.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, this was very interesting. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to end because our time is up. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for these very helpful insights, and hope the audience liked it.
Come join us in the workshop.